Hey, good morning, everyone. Josh's Severe Weather. Happy Friday to you. Very busy June month for the tropics here in the Atlantic, and lots of severe weather across the United States this month. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at that for you here. Bret has moved through the islands. It's still going to be impacting them today and tonight, but now moving into the Caribbean where wind shear is strengthening, and we're going to see a very quick weakening trend as Bret moves west towards Central America here early next week. We do have something else that I'm certainly watching. Tropical Storm Cindy beginning to pick up steam, and I'll show you the satellite in a minute, but we may have something that could even get possibly up to hurricane strength here. And it looks like it's going to be fighting wind shear next week, but then may have an opportunity to kind of re-strengthen with Bermuda in its eyes, and then perhaps even Atlantic Canada, maybe even Eastern New England here as we get to the very end of the month of June. But that is a ways off. Certainly, we're going to have more to watch here in the coming days. Behind these two systems, things are not going to be completely quiet. We've got more tropical waves coming off of Africa. And at this point, nothing of imminent threat, but something we're going to have to keep an eye on as we've gotten off to a very quick start. What's probably going to happen is after these two storms, we see a shift over to the Eastern Pacific where more active storms are going to get going here. And the Mexican coastline certainly is going to want to keep an eye on those. But the fact that we had Bret form a few days ago and Cindy form this morning east of the islands is just an incredible feat. We have never had two storms forming east of the Lesser Antilles here in the Caribbean in June. Usually the waters are a little too cool and the wind shear is a little too high. So this year we've already started off at a record pace here in the main development region here of the South Central Atlantic Ocean. Here's a look at the radar out of Barbados. This is Bret, and you can see, I'm going to show you here in just a second, the center of the storm has actually moved off onto the western side of all of this rain. This is Barbados right here. St. Lucia's right here. I believe this is Martinique, and the storm made landfall, I guess if you want to call it that. It kind of went over the islands very quickly here during the overnight hours, and now the center is actually moving away and out of range here, but all of the rain is following it, so actually the worst of the weather is behind the storm system. I like to call it a mullet storm. There's not a whole lot in the front, everything's in the back. But that's exactly what we're dealing with Bret. A lot of wind shear, but the strongest winds have moved away. We're still seeing some heavy bands of rain affecting St. Lucia and St. Vincent here and the Grenadines off to the south, even all the way down to Trinidad and Tobago here. So not a very nice day at all in the wake of this storm over the islands. Lots of rain coming through, gusty winds up to tropical storm strength, 40 miles per hour. But the good news is that this is not going to be a devastating storm for these folks. We will have some potential flooding to deal with, especially in the higher terrain. But we are already seeing a storm that is pulling away and weakening. So, as they say in the islands here, yet just another day in the Caribbean. So, anyway, this is Bret, and we are going to see a weakening trend. Waters are very warm over the Atlantic, but as we get into the Caribbean, a little bit cooler with respect to average. And wind shear is also something we're going to be keeping an eye on here. The center of Bret, and I'm sorry this map is kind of busy for you, but I'm going to draw on the map here. The center of Bret is right here, and I wish I could make this a different color. Let me see what I can do. But anyway, this is Bret right here. This is a strong amount of wind shear coming out of the west over Bret. So Cindy's actually over here in the green where the wind shear is more favorable for development. But as Cindy moves in this direction, it will be running into stronger wind shear as well. So right now it's in a good spot to strengthen. As we get towards the weekend, it's going to be in a worse spot. Once it makes it past this band in here and up towards Bermuda, up in this area, it will be back into an environment that's going to be more favorable for some potential development. Sorry, these graphics are very difficult to draw on, but this is Bret right here. This is Cindy, and you can see Bret is heading into the graveyard with lots of wind shear. Cindy is in a good spot now, but heading into that kind of same area where the wind shear is high, and then may survive and escape the worst of the wind shear and head into a more favorable zone here in the southwestern Atlantic. So that's what I'm going to be tracking for you all here. Here is a look. Oops. Here's a look at the satellite, and you guys can see on the water vapor here, not sure what's going on, but we have a trough that's digging into the central Atlantic. I'm going to draw back on here again. and show you that here's the trough right in here. This is moving southeast, and this is going to pick up Cindy here and allow her to start to feel that trough and move in between our two high pressure ridges here. Here's one of them. Here's the other one over here. This is Bret. It's already kind of made it past this trough, so it's going to continue in this direction. You can see a strong amount of wind shear in here. So Bret is going to move into that wind shear. It's going to take the tops of the storms away from the center, pull them east, and we may even lose that low-level circulation by the end of the weekend as the system moves south of Jamaica. Once this trough swings by, we've got another trough here on the east coast. That is going to lift away. We've got another trough behind it. These are going to protect the eastern United States from probably any form of landfall. But if this next system here next week begins to maybe get stalled like the one we have now, then if Cindy is still surviving, then we may see some form of steering that allows the system to go north or even northwestward. So we'll have to keep an eye on things up here in Maine and across Atlantic Canada as we get beyond 10 days, excuse me, maybe on to about 12 days. So anyway, that's what's going on with the steering. Beyond a Cindy here, we've gotten flare-ups, but nothing really showing any major organization. Actually, a lot of dry air north of these waves. So we're not likely to see any kind of development from our future system. This is Bret, and you can see very quickly we're going to see a weakening trend over the weekend as Bret moves almost due west and weakening to a tropical depression Saturday night, early Sunday morning. The trajectory of the storm continues to take it towards Central America. Here is a look at, we still have some tropical storm warnings out for the islands that are getting the backlash from the storm. This is, I believe, St. Vincent in the Grenadines, St. Lucia, and Martinique. We will see conditions, it's kind of slow to improve as the day wears on. You can kind of see on satellite here, the center of Bret is starting to flare up more thunderstorms and already well to the west of the islands here. Here's a look at the infrared. You can see here's our flare up of storms over the eastern Caribbean. The center is over in this area over here. There's strong southwesterly wind shear, which has blown most of those storms off onto the eastern side of our system. Here's the look at where tropical storm force winds are still going to be possible. This is going to be tonight and tomorrow. And you can see it kind of hits a wall as we get into the weekend, south of Hispaniola and north of Colombia. No tropical storm conditions expected over the western Caribbean. The storm gets sheared apart and weakens. What's left of it's probably going to continue off to the west and maybe move into Honduras and Nicaragua towards next Monday and next Tuesday. There's some models that try to tug it up towards the Yucatan, maybe even into the Southwest Gulf, but it's not really going to be in a great spot to develop at that point. The GFS ensemble kills it by the time it gets to Nicaragua here on Monday night. And the European ensemble, instead of killing it or just taking it across, does show some solutions. Try to pull it up towards the Yucatan into the southern Gulf of Mexico. I think this is going to be a little bit far-fetched, but something I'll keep an eye on for you guys here. The intensity forecast, we're at 60 miles per hour right now. We should see a quick weakening down to about 45 miles per hour around early in the day Saturday, and then down to tropical depression strength later Saturday night into Sunday morning. Aside from these two outliers, all the models keep it as a depression and probably weaken it into a degenerated tropical wave here by Sunday afternoon. Next up, we've got Cindy, and this storm is looking healthier, and the storm track is going to make a right turn and take it to the north of the islands. Here's Bermuda over here. So the National Hurricane Center does weaken the storm early next week as it hits that area of strong westerly wind shear that I showed you guys earlier. However, if it does try to lose its circulation here Wednesday, once it gets past the wind shear on Wednesday, the second half of next week near Bermuda, it may be in a spot where it could try to regenerate or re-strengthen. I'm going to show you that in a little bit. The visible satellite of Cindy, it certainly looks like a healthier storm than Bret. The winds haven't caught up to it yet. We'll have to see if a recon plane gets in there. But if you take a look at the infrared here on Cindy, you can see a pretty well-defined central dense overcast, a pretty well-defined area of thunderstorms, and a growing storm system. So Cindy definitely over the next 24 hours has the opportunity to strengthen here. A pretty decent chance that we do have tropical storm conditions. And while the chance goes down over the weekend and the second half and into the first half of next week, it may start to climb again. This is Bermuda here. Let me see if I can, I guess I can't really zoom in, but near and to the east of Bermuda here next Friday, we do see at least a 30% chance that we could maybe have a tropical storm redeveloping here. And then that chance starts to climb northeast of Bermuda by next Friday night and next Saturday. And if you're in Nova Scotia, certainly keep an eye on this. No guarantee at this point, but certainly some of the ensembles show that we may have some form of tropical depression, tropical storm, or remnant storm heading your way here by next Saturday night and next Sunday, the 1st of July. You can see here, overall, our models keep the system off to the east, at least the tightly clustered models do. One or two little outliers here, which I'm not not going to really trust in. But here's Bermuda, and you can see it's going to be about a week before Bermuda could be impacted by our system. Beyond that, the ensembles do try to hold the system together, and overall, they're taking them into Nova Scotia and then eventually up into Newfoundland and away here by July 2nd and 3rd. The European is a little farther west. It basically has the average of the models right over Bermuda in about a week. And then some of the models, it do show, some of those solutions, it does show it starting to feel the next trough digging down into the mid-Atlantic states and actually pulling it north-northwest, meaning if you're in Maine, maybe even Massachusetts, you need to keep an eye on it. However, the overall trend is still into Nova Scotia, but there are several outliers that are farther to the west if our storm holds together. The intensity forecast, a lot of our models show pretty good strengthening over the next 24 hours, maybe to strong tropical storm. I think there's a slight chance we could even have our first hurricane of the season. I would not rule that out. Once we get past Saturday morning, though, things level off. The wind shear picks up, and we do see some weakening by Sunday into Monday. And there's several of our models show enough weakening for this to be a depression again as we get to next Tuesday and Wednesday. However, after that, there are signs that maybe Cindy tries to fight the shear, hold her own, and become a tropical storm again. Even the GFS, which is a bit of an outlier, tries to bring back to hurricane intensity. I'll show you real quick here on the models, our storms. This is Bret, this is Cindy. Beyond it, really nothing of major concern. Bret dying over the weekend, Cindy almost dying, but the GFS says, we're going to try to re-strengthen here east of Bermuda late next week and take aim here at Atlantic Canada. And this particular model says it's a little slower and weakening by the 4th of July. Nothing behind it at this point. It does take the remains of Bret and kill it basically over the Yucatan with some action on the Pacific side here. The European model, a little bit different, kills Bret as we expect, takes Cindy, and eventually kills her off here on Monday night, and eventually just kind of has the remnant circulation southwest of Bermuda, a stronger high pressure system here, and the next front moving off the eastern seaboard basically absorbs the remains of Cindy, and then that's it. Nothing is going to develop beyond that. The Atlantic, while warm, is not going to be in a favorable environment to see intensification. We have drier air that's being predicted here north of those waves. Canadian model is also in the camp with the European, and you can see here, kills Bret off here as it moves into Nicaragua, and then kills Cindy here southwest of Bermuda, really west of Bermuda here, and this would be next Tuesday night into Wednesday, so that's it. So the GFS is kind of an outlier. The Icon model does take the remains of Bret here and has somewhat of a circulation still heading towards Belize. Here's a weakening Cindy here next Tuesday, and then actually tries to re-strengthen Cindy east of Bermuda. So it's got it making a hard right turn, whereas the remains of Bret are dying very quickly over the Yucatan, maybe trying to re-strengthen next Thursday heading into Mexico. However, the Icon, the German model, says what's left of Cindy is going to re-strengthen here northeast of Bermuda and maybe head up in the general direction of Newfoundland here around the beginning of July, around the 1st and 2nd. So we're going to have to keep an eye on this system. It may make a comeback, but don't call it a comeback. Here's Bret on the HAFS. The remainder of it kind of heads towards the Yucatan towards the middle of next week, but a very weak sheared storm. I don't know why I showed that to you guys twice. But anyway, on the Pacific side of things, we're watching an area that may develop here early next week, southwest of Mexico on the GFS. It does strengthen the gyre very quickly and have a second system behind it. So maybe two systems here heading over these islands, which are pretty much uninhabited, and maybe one or even two hurricanes at that point. And just ignore this little fantasy model run here. It's got something trying to form in the Gulf here around the 4th of July. Again, GFS has some bias here that we have to kind of factor in that probably won't happen. Here's the European, slower development, but does have a tropical storm at the middle of next week, and then weakening. It does not really have the second storm behind it that the GFS showed. The Canadian model says we have a tropical storm here, and then beyond it, another storm, which actually has a better shot at strengthening into a hurricane at the very end of the month of June. So we're going to have to watch these on the Mexican Riviera. The Icon model also says the first system develops into a tropical storm. The second one becomes a hurricane, maybe a stronger hurricane southwest of Acapulco. All right, so in the U.S., we've got a busy end of the week and weekend expected for many, and we're going to see severe weather, unfortunately. Flooding, still a potential here in Florida and southern Georgia, as well as eastern Montana. Heat, still an issue across Texas and New Mexico, where we're going to see near all-time record highs continuing and no relief in sight. We had a busy afternoon and evening yesterday with I don't know why this is not loading, but the Storm Prediction Center does show you we had lots of rough weather in Wyoming and especially Colorado with a pretty nice tornado that we saw south of Littleton here near Highlands Ranch. No damage, or I shouldn't say no damage, but no fatalities, fortunately. Lots of hail as well south of Denver yesterday. And we had active weather in Texas, New Mexico, and western Oklahoma as well. It was not too active in the southeast, but there were certainly some wind reports here in eastern North Carolina, as well as in the CSRA and scattered about parts of Florida and Georgia. Just pulse thunderstorms, but a lot of rain with those, and certainly that threat for damaging wind. Today, no organized areas of severe weather in the eastern U.S., but we could still have some heavy rain and maybe locally gusty winds. The next area that I'm watching is going to be in the high plains here, where we have an enhanced risk from Wyoming all the way into Nebraska. There's a 5% chance of tornadoes in eastern Wyoming. Major wind threat will develop tonight over this area. Not really a derecho, but certainly a mesoscale convective system that's going to have a lot of damage. That spreads into Nebraska overnight tonight. A lot of hail as well late today into the evening across this region. Down across the Texas Panhandle, we've been battered over and over again. We will continue to have severe weather later today into the night tonight. Tomorrow, things get active farther east. We bring back the severe weather threat into Iowa, Missouri, even into western Illinois at night. There will be a risk for tornadoes around Des Moines, so keep that in mind. There will certainly be a risk for severe wind and maybe some very large hail east of Omaha into Iowa, southern Minnesota, and northern Missouri. And it doesn't stop here on Saturday. Sunday, we are going to see areas that need rain, unfortunately, could see severe weather. That includes Kentucky, and there may be a significant amount of severe weather somewhere here from Cincinnati back all the way to Bowling Green, Paducah, and the Boot Heel of Missouri. And that does include Nashville as well as Clarksville, Tennessee. I do think this area may need to be expanded farther south and east, but we're going to have to keep an eye on things. There could be a cluster that drops south into Mississippi and Alabama and eastern Arkansas in the evening Sunday night. So this is the average of the models, but the GFS shows something's going to drop all the way down towards the Gulf Coast here on Sunday night. We're not done with that. On Monday, we've got at least a slight risk for severe weather from DC and southern Maryland right on through the I-95 corridor, down through Richmond, down through Raleigh, Charlotte, and to Columbia. And this area could grow northward up towards Baltimore and Philly and Reading, Pennsylvania here as well, with our next storm system that moves through. So a very active end of the weekend into the start of next week. Here's a look at the NAM model. You can see areas that we're watching over Texas and Oklahoma will be weakening. A new area of storms blows up over Wyoming, Nebraska, and South Dakota. We'll have additional storms down here, the same spots that have been getting hit. Large hail, a few tornadoes possible. Then as we head to tomorrow, things are going to be a little bit quieter here in the same spots that have been getting hit. But eastern Oklahoma and North Texas do have to watch for severe weather tomorrow evening, as well as parts of northern and central Missouri. I'm going to shift this off to the east and to the northeast, and you all can see where our low pressure system is going to be going with lots of rain, lots of severe weather. We're going to have multiple waves here of damaging winds, large hail, and tornadoes over the next 24 to 48 hours. That expands eastward tomorrow, and we're going to see potentially a big outbreak of severe weather from near the Twin Cities right on down through Iowa into northern parts of Missouri. And the time frame for this is going to be mid-afternoon and then shifting east to about sunset. Behind it, a few showers and storms continuing as our low pressure circulates. But at that point, it's just going to be pretty wet here across the Lake Superior region. Let's take a look here at the Midwest. We definitely need rain. We don't need the severe weather. We're going to see some rain over the Great Lakes, But really, unfortunately, I think this is a severe weather outbreak that we have to watch here. First Saturday night over the Mississippi Valley. This is around 11 o'clock Saturday night, dying by the time it gets to about Chicago. But then we're going to see a resurgence of storms on Sunday over parts of northern and central Illinois. And this is going to expand south and east into the Ohio River Valley. And I'm going to show you the Ohio River Valley where we see these storms moving south and east here Sunday morning into the Nashville area and then weakening, and then additional storms starting to pop up. Now, in the longer range, since the NAM only goes out 60 hours, which is midday on Sunday, you can see on the GFS, we're going to see waves of showers and storms, which could turn severe anywhere from southeastern Michigan and western Ohio down through Kentucky into the evening across Arkansas and western and central middle Tennessee. These may continue all the way south into central parts of Mississippi here on Sunday night, and even into the overnight hours. We may have to watch things in the Ark-La-Miss region here by early in the day on Monday. Here's a look at the southeast, very active again today. From Florida up into the Carolinas, scattered showers and storms are slow moving. They could be locally severe. Tomorrow's not going to be as active. We get a break, but more showers and storms could pop up with heating of the day. And then Sunday looks like a more common day here in the southeast for what we would expect this time of the year. But as we get beyond Sunday afternoon to Sunday night on the GFS model, we see storms flaring up here over Alabama and Arkansas, and everything moving south and east Sunday night into central and eastern Mississippi and into parts of Alabama, with additional storms continuing into early Monday morning right along I-20. So Monday could be an active day, and then things are going to shift south into the Florida Panhandle and Alabama. We don't need any more rain, more severe weather down here, but I think that's what we're going to see, unfortunately. Then the Atlantic coast gets busy here late on Monday into Monday night. Additional showers and storms are going to move southward and stall along the Gulf Coast early next week. We are going to see some busy weather into the mid-Atlantic. I'll show you real quick. Today we've got upper level low shifting northeastward here. Active weather expected this afternoon across the Carolinas, again, West Virginia, all the way up into New York State. That system is going to lift northeastward and affect the Northeast and New England tomorrow, and should move out in time for Sunday. But we're going to see our next system moving in from the west. You can see kind of the first wave falls apart on Sunday. The second wave behind it's the one we're going to have to watch. And this is Sunday afternoon. We're going to have scattered showers and storms in the Northeast, but our cold front moves in and we see storms flaring up here Monday afternoon with the heating of the day. There could be a few tornadoes. There will definitely be locally strong winds and possibly some hail. And I do think this threat shifts all the way up into central and eastern Pennsylvania and down into South Carolina. Very busy afternoon Monday expected before this moves out. And then we have wet weather on Tuesday over the Northeast. Finally, we'll look at the Northeast. A wet weekend expected here as our upper low shifts north and east. We'll see scattered showers and storms this afternoon over Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York. Tomorrow, maybe some soaking rain over parts of New York and central and southern New England. Tomorrow night, that shifts up into Maine and southeast Canada. Additional showers and storms are going to be popping up here with the heating of the day on Sunday over portions of northern New England and northern New York. But then beyond that, we've got active weather expected Monday. It'll be wet over New England, maybe pretty stormy over eastern Pennsylvania, the Delaware Valley, New Jersey. And then additional rain and storms in the forecast, unfortunately, again for Tuesday and Wednesday, with a heavy rain threat expected here next week. And in fact, totals in the Northeast could be well over 2 inches, maybe as much as 5 to 6 inches here through the middle of next week. The Southeast will still be wet, but not as wet here, fortunately, in the southern Appalachians. Could have some heavy rain over Mississippi and Alabama, up to a couple of inches. And a lot of rain expected from Montana to Minnesota. Amounts widespread from 2 to 4 inches could produce some flash flooding. That was a lot today, but thank you so much for watching. Another video coming tomorrow. I'm going on vacation Sunday for a week and a half, so there will probably not be any videos depending on my internet, but I will certainly give you guys updates on the latest with our severe weather and with our active tropical season. I really appreciate your time today. It means a lot to me. And if you could, please consider subscribing to my channel as I bring you the latest and greatest weather information. I am a meteorologist. I'm a child of God. I give God all the glory for what I do every day. And I like to stay in the Word and share with you why I feel like I've been very successful. And that is through the goodness of God. I like to go back to Genesis and how everything began. And it says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. As a scientist, I really struggle with the theory that everything just popped up through a big bang. I'm not saying that's wrong, but I really believe if something like that happened, that it had to come from a higher power and that God is good. In fact, in Genesis 1, it said that God created things and that it was good 6 times in the King James Version. Genesis 1:4, and God saw the light that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. Then Genesis 10, and God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters he called the seas, and God saw that it was good. And then 2 verses later, Genesis 1:12, earth brought forth grass, herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit whose seed was in itself after his kind, and God saw that it was good. And he says it again, to divide day and night, and God saw that it was good, creating whales, every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind, and God saw that it was good. And then finally, Genesis 1:25, and God made the beast of the earth after his kind, and cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind, and God saw that it was good. Right after that, he said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female. He created he them. We weren't just put here by some random mistake. We were created. God created us to have dominion over everything else. With much of that responsibility, there comes much accountability, and God wants to hold us accountable for our actions. He wants us to take care of the earth. He wants us to live and multiply and replenish things. He doesn't want us to destroy things, and that includes each other. He wants us to live harmoniously, to take care of each other. And to me, the goodness of God in me and the ability for me to live eternally through God's Son, Jesus Christ, means a lot. But the only way we're ever going to get there is by being nice to each other, and most importantly, serving God and following his commands, and not living things the way we think is right, but the way God says it is right. God created things so that they would be good. God wants us to be good and to acknowledge him and to follow his commandments. And God wants us to take care of each other. And I feel like that's my calling. So I want to take care of you all. And I want to pray for you if you're going through any struggles, or if you just need a little bit of encouragement. Maybe you're dealing with a situation where you know what is right based on what God says, but you're not seeing it happen in your world, and you just need a little bit more encouragement, a little bit more of a push. I'm happy to pray for you. My shirt's disappearing again. But anyway, I hope you all have a safe Friday, and I look forward to talking to you again tomorrow. Have a blessed day. See you then.